Mm. Feels very official.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We'll give everybody a second to get situated. Make you the host.
Get to be the host. Oh, yay. Okay, cool. Well, everybody, as you are popping in, I'd love to hear where y'all are coming in from today. And also tell us your most recent indulgence. I was asking Kasey what our icebreaker question should be as everybody was kind of coming in and getting settled. And that's what she came up with. So that's on her. Welcome from Vegas, Brandon. Yeah.
Well, at least, Emily, you could say it doesn't have to be like an
Yes, that's not
edible or drinkable thing.
my most recent indulgence was the stack of books that I got on Barnes and Noble's half price pre-order day.
Oh,
A new
that's
Mac, Julia, that's perfect. Absolutely.
I got a chicken cup that I really enjoy.
Oh,
It's
what?
so cute. It's
Show the chicken cup, please.
I don't have it. It's in the car. It's like, one of those cups that you drink, like one of those cold for 24-hour deals.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. It's got chickens on it. And it's like so ugly, it's cute. And Emily hates chickens with a passion.
My family raised chickens, so I have looked in their beady little eyes and seen death. So I'm good.
Yeah,
Good.
no.
Yeah.
That's why I got it.
I think of my most recent.
I'm kind of an overindulger. I love indulging.
Go you, honestly. It's a whole mood and I love it.
That's great. I support that.
Thank you.
Well, and just in case, Gabrielle came in right whenever I was asking the question. So she thought I was asking her what her indulgence was, which was a little uncomfortable for her, I imagine.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mine is just my grill, and I will not get into the details, but I just got a new grill and it's the best thing ever right now. It's like I look forward to going home so I can put stuff on it. But yeah.
Maybe mine is a piece of art that I bought that hasn't come in yet.
Oh,
Picture with you, Kasey. You'll appreciate it.
I bet I will. I could already guess what it is. Can't wait. Can't wait to see it. Lord.
Funny, but also not safe for work.
Right. Yeah.
I wondered if that was it.
And better.
Oh God. Oh,
In
that
the
makes
chat,
me
Jen
laugh.
said she had some Skittles yesterday. Jen, we love that
Right.
for you.
That's delicious. That's delicious. All right, Emily. If you want to get us going, we will. We'll get started. I just checked, and I have a handful of emails here, for people asking if this is going to be recorded, because they apparently are not able to make it on. So yes, it will be recorded, and we'll make sure we get those out to everybody.
Yeah. So today we're talking about finding joy when doing more isn't doing more. So we have an esteemed panel here, Maureen Werrbach, Gabrielle, and Kasey. So I'm going to give you guys just a few minutes to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story and your experience with joy and business and doing more but not feeling more. Who shall I start with? Maureen's like, not me, please. So it's going to be Gabrielle.
Okay, I can handle it. So, I'm Gabrielle. I'm normally based in Sarasota, Florida, but I'm actually in Denver right now, and that's kind of part of my story is that I love traveling. And I'm in LCSW. I had a successful on paper group practice here in Denver. We mostly serve the Medicare and Medicaid community. And I started that Well, I hired my first clinician in 2019, and in 2 years, I grew it to 7 figures and 15 clinicians, and hated my life. So I grew very quickly, and I had not done a lot of the inner work that needed to be done when running a business, and also had come to the conclusion that running a group practice was just not in alignment with who I am anymore. So I sold that practice in 2021 and have completely shifted and pivoted my life. Now I do probably too many things. A lot of people know that I have like almost 20 streams of income, but that's what works for me. I do consulting on scaling and selling a business, having conscious leadership, building a business that aligns with your values and your purpose, adding income streams. I do coaching. I do speaking engagements. I run retreats on burnout prevention and using polyvagal theory. I'm a sound healer. I have an Etsy store. I have online courses. So I do a kind of a lot of things now, and they all bring me joy, but it was a very long road and journey to get here. So I'm happy to talk with everyone about that today.
Awesome. Maureen, how about you?
Yep. My name's Maureen Werrbach, and I also have a group practice that will be celebrating its 12th year in about next month, June 1st, less than 30 days from now. And I have about 60 or so employees, and similar to Gabrielle, like probably around 2019 or 2020. I know that was when you started, but that was like when I got to my burnout stage and realized like the way that I was engaging in my group practice didn't align with my mental health or just like my sense of happiness as a business owner, and made a lot of shifts so that I could, in some ways, similar to Gabrielle, like I like doing a lot of things. And I'm on the Colby A index. I'm a quick start, which just means that I like to like try new things. And so I changed my sort of my business model and created a really large leadership team that can pretty much run my group practice so that I could do more of the like idea generation and other streams of income and things like that. So I do that. And then I also have the group practice exchange, which is there to help other group practice owners get to a place where they can manage their group practices and not be burnt out.
Awesome. Kasey?
Cool. So I started a group practice back in 2015, and I actually started my practice for a couple different reasons. One, because I just felt like owning a business is something that I'd always wanted to do. It was just part of my personality. So it felt like a good fit for me at that time. Also, I started it because I had a lot of fear. Um, a lot of fear around, like, at that time I was in a high risk pregnancy situation. Right before that, I didn't start the practice while I was pregnant, but I had a lot of, I guess, would you say, consequences? Maybe that's not a great word, but as a result of the time I spent on bed rest through the pregnancy, I basically lost everything that I had on a financial level, and had to file bankruptcy, had to start from scratch. I was on Medicaid, like the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to start a business so that I could actually feel more secure financially, and so that I could produce revenue, or something could produce revenue, even if it wasn't me that was the one doing all of the work or all of the therapy. So I started that really with a vengeance, and just hell bent on like making back the money that I lost, which wasn't a whole lot, and creating a life that was different than the one I was raised in, and the one that I saw my parents struggle, just all of that. And I think I can take things to the extreme sometimes. That's also part of my personality. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going all in. Like we're doing it. And I went down that road with the group practice, and during that time, I think I was so focused on the success and the future that I lost sight of what was happening in my day to day. I lost my emotions. I lost my um, happiness, joy, all of those things. And to be honest with everyone that's on here, I literally did not even know it. I was pretty oblivious to it. I think it's kind of wild how the mind and body works to either protect ourselves or, it just does lots of things. And for me, losing touch with who I really was kind of part of the reason I was successful in some ways. I also don't want that to happen to others, which is kind of how this webinar became to be. Just as an inspiration in a way. Like I wrote the book that the title of the webinar is based about during a lot of the crisis I was going through. And I just want people to walk away from these conversations with Gabrielle and Maureen knowing that they don't have to sacrifice success for joy. They don't have to sacrifice joy for success or vice versa. You can have it in your own way, in whatever way that suits you and in your lifestyle.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Well, guys, we're going to dive in. But before we do, I did want to point out that Q&A box. If you have questions as we are going on, pop those in there and we will save time at the end to get through as many of those as we can. Okay. So first up, Kasey, before we dive into finding joy when doing more isn't doing it anymore, I want to kind of establish some goalposts. So if you want to start us off, tell us, what does joy mean for you?
Okay. What does joy mean? Joy means, for me personally, it's almost like when I experience joy, I feel that childlike little girl or little person or whatever it is, something childlike inside of me that keeps me present in a moment and literally think about nothing else going on. You think, these kids, they don't have a care in the world. That's joy to me. And not indefinite, not a care in the moment, but in a moment, there's no other care in the world.
Yeah. Maureen, what about you?
I'd say it's feeling creative. For me specifically, I noticed when I am not feeling joy, or if I'm, going through something or just not feeling well, that I lose all sense of creativity and like motivation and determination. Part of my personality is that. So when I lose it, that's a really big cue that something's off. So like when I'm in my most joyful space, I'm not like grinding. I'm being creative, whether it's like doing something in the yard, new, it's crafting, it maybe is diversifying a service in my business. It might be, doing something new and exciting. But I feel like for me, joy shows itself most when I'm able to like use the creative side of my brain.
Yeah. Wow, I love that. Gabrielle, what about you?
I have a blend of both of those actually. Is how I feel when I am at my most joyful. I know that it means for me, like I feel very fulfilled and I feel compassionate, I feel connected, and I'm in the present moment. And I also know that when I'm feeling that way, I'm also creative, because that is also kind of a red flag to me, is when I lack the creativity or I lack kind of like that motivation or that drive, I know that there is something that's not in alignment for me.
Mhm. Okay, I gotta say something here, and I'm gonna butcher this completely, and I always do. So we had a guest on our podcast not too long ago, maybe a month or so, 2 months ago, and her name is Susie DeVille. She's an author. She is a traveler. She is an artist, just this amazing entrepreneur. And she wrote a book about really creative entrepreneurship. And she talks about how our brains need that creative piece actually in order to be a better entrepreneur. You're activating different neuro whatevers in your brain. Um, that then help you to balance and help you to become a better problem solver, a better communicator, a better leader, a better all of those things just through creativity. And I thought it was really cool because she does some form of creative practice every single day, and she said that that's just it's part of her routine, just like it would be for some people to exercise or to have coffee or anything. And she talks about how she noticed such a huge and dynamic shift in her work when she started doing that. And it made me think a lot about this. And I don't know about you two, but when I'm not in a super healthy state, and when I'm lacking that creativity in my life or like in my business, when I'm super stressed, or if we've got a big problem financially or, something like that that we have to solve, I tend to go super hard into outcome based thinking. Like everything becomes outcome based. And if you think about it, with creativity and art, it's the opposite. You should not be going into a creative project thinking about the outcome. You should be living in that moment. So I'm wondering if either of you have connected outcome-based thinking to some of your maybe not as healthy business practices.
Yeah. For me, I feel like similar to what you had mentioned in the beginning, Kasey, of like the what we see on social media or in Facebook groups and things around success often is tied to like constant growth or some kind of like financial benchmark. And I know for me, in terms of like me being just a determined and motivated and someone who historically has been like, if something's working, I'll just keep doing it, and realizing it's easy in a sense for me to be successful in my group practice from like a growth or financial perspective, but that it oftentimes has been tied to like some kind of number or place to get to versus enjoying the process itself, which is the creative space, is like the process. And I've been most unhappy in that space, like when it's tied to, and I'm a metrics person, so I think numbers are important in some way to know, like you can't, be creative. Like if you have a business, it needs to be financially stable. You can't just be creative for the sake of it without it having any sort of ability to support you financially. But I think it's easy for me to get out of that balance of losing creativity if something goes wrong, and then going into like action mode, and feeling like I need to like hit certain benchmarks, some growth benchmarks. And I find that usually that's when I'm in my least happy, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do it. I'm just like
Yeah.
doing the work to get to that next spot so that I can relax again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Susie is right. So there is a deep connection to our nervous system, which is responsible for a lot. It's responsible for our emotional regulation, things that are happening automatically, internally and externally. And when you are in your ventral vagal state, which is like your rest and digest, that is your baseline when you are your best self. That is where creativity lives. And that's also where your prefrontal cortex is online, which is where we make good decisions, or we have executive functioning or dysfunction if you have ADHD like I do. But either way, we still need that part of our brain. And so when we are living in scarcity, which I also notice for me too, Maureen, like when I'm in a place of scarcity, which I don't always recognize right away, I am more outcome based. Like I think more about the numbers and I tend to like really obsess over that. And I think that's just for me, like more of a scarcity mindset. And I know that when I'm in more of my connected creative space, I can look at things a little bit more objectively and use those numbers to more support me instead of being like, oh my God, like I have to reach this next benchmark. I have to keep going, going, going. I can look at it from a different way of like, these are important, but this stuff is also important too. So yeah, it's all connected is the bottom line and the moral of the story.
Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because my neuro thingies, didn't listen. It's been a long week, okay? My neuro thingies are not quite.
Hashtag neuro thingies.
Yeah. It just is what it is. But that's exactly what I meant to say. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. Uh, but I think one of the things that we all have to watch for, and even just within coaching relationships that I have now, I'm able to pick up on it a lot faster and able to say, hey, you're kind of slipping into this when then thinking. And it shouldn't be when we hit 1 million in revenue a year, then I'll start doing yoga, or what I'm saying. Like it really needs to be more integrated than what entrepreneurs tend to gravitate toward. But I'll hush. Go ahead, Emily.
No, it was a good interjection. Okay. So entrepreneurism is something that all three of you guys have in common. So I want to know, what problems were you attempting to solve, whether external or internal, when you first started your businesses? And do you think that you accomplished that? Maureen, you want to start?
Sure. Your question was internal or external things that I wanted to solve by starting my businesses. So, well, one, similar to Kasey, is I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I had a jewelry store when I was in college and in Chicago, and I just knew that was like the place for me, was to be able to like stretch my creative muscles in a way that can only be done if you have your own business. And so that was part of it. The other part of it was I was having kids. So it's back in 2012. I had my first kid, and really wanted to have a type of balance that allowed me to be with my kids and not have to work a 40-hour work week, which didn't necessarily happen initially, but at least I was in some amount of control of it, and I could do it from home and during sleep when the kids were sleeping and stuff, but had more flexibility. So I wanted to solve for those two things, but I also realized like I look at a lot of things from like an impact perspective, and just felt like my own singular impact can only go so far. And so when I started my group practice, it was really more from a like collective impact, larger impact perspective that I wanted to start it. And I feel like through the years have gotten to a point where it's doing that. The business is no longer me, and it can function without me, and it's providing the impact in the communities, whether I exist or don't exist at this point anymore, which is, where you hopefully want your business to get to, so it doesn't die with you. And so, yeah, I think that was kind of my goal for it. And of course, along the way, over the course of these 12 years, I've made 8 billion freaking mistakes that like veered me off the path a bunch of times. But, I think the longer you're an entrepreneur, the more you can quickly catch yourself veering off path to like course correct.
Kasey, what about you? You're muted.
Still been a long week. Yeah, similar to Maureen, I of course the impact was there. For me, I saw, aside from just personal selfish-ish reasons, the community that I was a part of at the time was lacking in a lot of ways, and what I wanted to bring to the table was something I was bringing through therapy already, myself, but I realized that if more people were doing it, then there would be such more of an impact positively in the community, and so I definitely wanted that to be a big part of my reason for doing it. But also, you know, I I don't know about the two of you, but growing up and going through like traditional school and um, mostly middle school, high school type deal, I felt a little different. Like I did not necessarily I had friends and I fit in that way, and, I had my little groups that I did stuff with, but it just felt like there was something about me that just wasn't quite the same, and I think a lot of it had to do with just my view on things in general. I mean, I'm naturally a challenger, so if you tell me that this is how you should think about something, I wanna know why. Like, tell me more. Why do you think I should believe that? Why is this something we're teaching in school? Like, what do you mean I need to pick a career when I'm 17 years old? Like, why? Um, and then as got a little older and started going through college, there were just things about me that I thought, how am I ever going to have a normal job? Like I went to school to be a teacher because that's what I thought I was supposed to do because that's what everybody does around here. And I graduated and started teaching, and I'm thinking like, this sucks. Like I love kids, but that doesn't mean you need to be a teacher. Like I'm not a morning person. I had to be there at 7:30. I had to get up at 5. Um, I don't like structure. I was like the what's it called? The Miss Frizzle of the elementary school. I'm like, come on, kids, we're going outside. Like I'm not sitting in this room any longer. I had to ask if I had to go to the bathroom more than just like a normal female would have to go to the bathroom. I would have to ask my principal, and then I would get reprimanded for having to go to like leave the classroom and all that, just silly stuff. Like just all of these rules, like these confining, I felt very confined. I felt very much in like trapped. And if you've read my book that I just wrote, like that is not healthy Kasey. Like feeling trapped Kasey is not healthy Kasey. I can function perfectly fine if I can do it on my own terms. I'm not a 8 to 5 kind of girl. I like, you know what I'm saying? And so entrepreneurship felt like something that would allow me to have the freedom that I need to not only be creative, but to be able to make a greater impact.
Gabrielle?
I wish that I would have figured that out sooner that I was an entrepreneur because I have a similar story, Kasey, where I felt like there was like a certain message about what I should be doing and what I was supposed to be doing. And that was like, okay, well, you need to get a good job that has good benefits. And I even remember when I left my corporate job at Humana as a social worker, like there were very few people in my life who were supportive of that. And people very close to me were like, why would you do that? You're not going to make any money. You're making a huge mistake. Like, it's the wrong thing to do. But one of my friends who is in a different industry, and I'm really close with her, and she's also like my business coach. And
Mhm.
she was the one who really encouraged me to do it because she comes from a family of entrepreneurs, and it feels like her the messaging that she got was so different than the messaging that I got, and
Mhm.
she still encourages me all the time. um so I did take that leap, obviously, and I wanted to work for myself. I found that exciting. I wanted to create a space for me where I could work how I wanted to work, which I continue to do. And with my group practice, I wanted to create a space for social workers and other therapists who could come and not get burnt out, work with the clients they wanted to work with. And in my community, well, pretty much everywhere, actually, not just in Colorado, but everywhere, there was a huge lack of Medicare providers. And I really loved working with that population. And I knew there was such a big need. So that was kind of my external motivation and the impact that I had with my practice.
I do want to say why I love this question. Also, why I hate this question is because so many people, and I almost guarantee that everybody that's listening to this webinar right now can relate to this in some way, like these core foundational reasons of why entrepreneurship felt like the right thing for us. But so many times we wind up in it, and then we lose sight of all of the reasons as to why we started it in the first place. So, and most people go into entrepreneurship for a foundational need of freedom. But then think about it. You work more than you probably ever worked as an employee. You feel trapped within your own business so many times. You feel alone. You go into it because you're like, hey, I want camaraderie, I want support. And then you're sitting here making all these big decisions by yourself. It does feel very lonesome sometimes. And I think without us keeping our finger on that pulse, it's very easy to slip into unhealthy patterns and reasons that are actually the opposite of why we started the businesses in the first place. So, just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. You've actually just like set up my whole next question for
Oh,
me.
nice.
Good job. Yeah. So I want you guys to talk a little bit about like the struggle. We know it's difficult to own your own business. I mean, like all the things that Kasey mentioned are 100% true. And I feel like it's kind of this constant, like I have to do more, like Maureen was saying, like I have to achieve that next number, I have to make it to that next milestone. And it can just get a little overwhelming. So have you all encountered that in your business? And if you don't care, tell us a little bit about it. Who wants to go first? I'll let any of you do it.
I can say that yes, there are lots of struggles and lots of mistakes, which is part of it. Like there's, you can prepare and there's so many things you can do, but there's also things that you just never knew. And I learned definitely a lot about that by managing my practice and what I liked about managing people and what I do not like about managing people, which is most of it. And as a recovering people pleaser and somebody that still struggles with boundaries and codependency, I found that very, very, very difficult. And that was a huge part of my own burnout, was bending over backwards for people, just doing what, they wanted because I didn't want them to be mad at me. I didn't want to be a bad boss. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I wanted everyone to be happy, which was a very, again, big problem and came and bit me in the ass for sure. And I've learned a lot about that, but it's taken me a long time to get here. So what was the second part of the question? I feel like I kind of went off course there.
I think you got it.
You got the whole thing.
I'll say mine feels very similar to yours in the people-pleasing category. I am an only child of a German mom and a military dad, so all eyes were on me to do everything perfect. I got straight A's all the way through grad school. I got 1 A- once and was asked why. So I very much like have grown up and started my business and ran my business for a long time, being afraid not of making mistakes. I weirdly have embraced making mistakes that I've deemed like operational like business growth stuff. I'm a quick start. I have ADHD. I make a lot of decisions. I don't mind being like, well, that didn't work, and like owning it and moving on. But when it involves other people, so like employee related, the one thing I dislike most about owning a business is having employees, because you literally can't ever make people happy. And this part of me that it'll always be there. I've just created essentially like some amount of barrier by having a leadership team that can be those people for me, because with 60 plus employees, someone always is unhappy with something. And that, like, after like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years of having my business, like, got me to a point where I was wanting to just get rid of it. So my biggest struggles always come around employee related things, and feeling like I just like can't, like the bar always is moving and I can't ever make everyone happy. And there's some amount of it that is out of my control, like as an insurance-based practice, like I can only pay as much as we're getting, like, and just feeling like I'm a good person. I care about people. I want everyone to like be able to live their lives the way they want to, and struggling with like when people feel like I'm not a good enough boss or whatever. I feel like that's probably been my biggest struggle in the business, because it's not around growing I could do that shit with my eyes closed. It's really like, how do you do it while just understanding that you're never going to make everyone happy, especially when you have like a background like mine where the expectation was to like do everything right, and to like have it be black and white and have an answer that is good for everyone. So yeah, that's probably been my biggest struggle the whole time. And I will not say that I've overcome it after 12 years of having my practice. And I've just gotten a little hardened, I guess, to it, where I'm like, I can feel it for a little bit, and then I let go a little more quickly than I used to. And I have created a system that like shields me from the day-to-day stuff, so that I don't have to like know every single person's problem all the time and just constantly be in a state of feeling like hurt by not being able to make everyone happy. That's mine.
So, unlike Maureen, I was not an only child. I have I have an older brother and an older sister that are 13, 14 years older than me. So I was an accident. My parents were older when they had me. Not necessarily, they were older back then. So at 35, 40 years ago, that was old to be having a baby. Not so much anymore, but so I was definitely the youngest. But in some ways, it did feel like an only child too, because by the time I was older, my brother and sister were out of the house. Then my dad decided he was going to just keep having kids when he was 60. And so then I have another set, a brother and sister that are about, 20 or so years younger than me. So I'm not really sure if I would fall under the oldest, the youngest, or the middle child. I don't know. But I say that because I can identify with Maureen to some degree in that sense. My parents definitely were not looking at me to be the overachiever. In fact, like I would have taken someone like Maureen when I was younger and just corrupted the fuck right out of them. Like I love the like perfectionists.
Well,
Go
that's
ahead.
not to say that I didn't turn around as soon as I was out of school and like secretly smoke cigarettes and drink and do all these bad things without anyone seeing it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
very self-destructive, because I felt like I had to do it while, because all eyes were on me. I would find sneaky ways to be. So I did my fair share of not great things, definitely in the lens of like wanting to like be in control of myself. Also had an eating disorder. I mean, we can unpack a whole shit ton of things in that sort of way, but yeah.
Yeah.
I would have gravitated towards anyone who is corrupt just because of my perfectionism at home. I was the one that like got friends of mine to drink before they
Uh-huh.
were thinking of drinking, just because I was like,
Oh.
I have to be bad when no one's
Uh-huh.
watching.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
See, I was just bad whenever I felt like it. Like there was no hiding my bad. You know, if I want to be bad, we're gonna be bad. Maybe that's why we're a bad combo together.
We are.
Yeah, we're bad. I still corrupt her to this day.
But it's so much fun. It's like my
I
most
know.
exciting times is when I get to hang out with you, because I'm so like straight laced at home that I'm like, my wild side comes out in Kentucky, and I'm like, that's not home. I get to be whoever I want when I'm there with you.
Yeah, I take pride in that. Um, but a lot of what you were saying though, I resonate with totally, because there is a lot of struggles about entrepreneurship. And to be honest with you, the like what you said, the financial struggles, the organizational struggles, all of those types of struggles. I don't want to say they're easy. I don't want people to think I'm like, oh yeah, those are easy for me, because they're not easy. But there's something that it's more. It falls within my wheelhouse than the people problems.
It's emotionally
So
easier, I feel
yeah,
like. Might
right,
not
it
be
is.
physically easier, but like
Yeah,
emotionally, at least for me, that kind of struggle isn't hard. Where
100%.
the people part isn't really physically hard and brain wise hard, but it's like emotionally really hard.
Yeah,
So
that's 100%. Um, And what I noticed for me with the struggles that I've experienced since 2015, 'cause that's when I started my first business, is really just being the more self-aware I have become, the more that I've made connections between things that are presenting themselves in my business, which over the years have really triggered me. Triggering abandonment, when you have high turnover with employees and you see that, oh, resignation, it like really triggered something down deep inside of me. And so it was very taxing emotionally, and I could not figure out how to resolve it. It triggered issues with grief, and it activated fears. It showed me a lot about just my leadership style in both good and bad ways. So the struggles in my journey have been very much like it's just like a mirror. My business has almost been like a mirror holding up in front of my face, showing me all of the things, good and bad, about myself, and the things that were unresolved for a large part of my life. And it wasn't really until I started writing my book that I was like, holy crap, like, oh, like that's why I'm getting so upset. And thankfully, like what Maureen was said, building that barrier, my solution was building that leadership team so that I did have a little bit of protection and shield, because I did get to the point where if I have to deal with one more person's complaining, I will shut this thing down. Like I just can't. I just can't. And I think so many of us try to go in and do it all. And when we get to this number, then we'll be able to hire more people. Like it just if I had to do it over again, I would absolutely do it the opposite. I would go right out of the gate with a leadership team, just because I don't think my psyche could handle it again. It was too much for me.
Yeah. This might be a spoiler alert, but I think we have guessed by this point that you all, like throughout all of your businesses and stuff, felt like you were missing some joy at certain times. Can you talk a little bit about how you understood that that was what was missing and how that manifested in your lives? Gabrielle?
Well, it took me much longer to figure that out than I would have liked. Um, and I think it really is all tied to, again, like we could unpack a lot of stuff here for all of us, I'm sure, but a lot of perfectionism, codependency, people pleasing, my fear of how people perceive me, what I thought success should be. I had a very clear, or so I thought, definition of my head is like, this is what it should be. These are the numbers that you should hit. You should hustle. You should push harder. You should work more, hire more people, do more things. You should work on the weekend. That's what successful people do. Um, and I think I started really, well, I probably really started feeling burnt out in 2020, but I didn't realize it until probably around this time in 2021. And I just had this sense of like detachment and apathy. So I didn't care what happened. I was like, if somebody needs me, fuck you. Like, I don't care if you have a problem. Like, don't ask me. I know that it's my business, but it's not my problem right now. I don't want to answer you. And I do remember, like, during this season, just waking up every day and feeling like, again, really numb and detached and very angry. And I kind of took a step back and I was like, is this what I want my life to look like? Is this how I want to feel? Waking up every day, like snapping at my husband, snapping at my staff, like just completely not being engaged and involved with life. Um, and so that's kind of when I decided to sell. And if I hadn't sold, I would have just closed it. That was my other option because I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I came to that conclusion. Well, first of all, if anybody's listening to this and they're thinking of selling, that does not solve all the problems. It's super stressful, and the things that we're running away from will keep following you. But I had such a hard time because I was like, this is my identity, like, this is my business. What am I going to do if I'm not like in simple practice every day looking at people's calendars? Like, what is my life going to be? And my business broker was like, you are too narrowly focused on that. You need to zoom out and think of the big picture. This is one chapter in your book of your life. Think of this as a stepping stone. Selling your business is going to get you to the next thing. And that sounds very small, but that shift in my perspective was so unbelievably helpful. And that's when I decided to sell and also created my business that I have now, which I love. And every single day, I mean, there's still things I don't love, but most of the time I feel very fulfilled and I do things that are in alignment with my values, and things that are not in alignment, I say no to. And when I say no, every single time, something bigger and better and more fulfilling comes through the door.
I love that. I would say my recognition was when I in 2020 felt burnt out and in the same space of like, I'm gonna just sell it. And I decided I had a leadership team, obviously at that point, but they weren't leading in like the way that I needed. Like, and so I decided to go to Costa Rica for a month in the summer. And there were no like fires or anything. Like they could lead enough to like keep the business afloat for the month. And I spent a whole month with my kids and like did no work at all in TGPE and in my group practice. And I came back and was like back immediately day one, feeling the same burnt out feeling I was before I left. And it was like 2020. So I was like, I just don't, there's so much more conversation now about like the cure to burnout isn't to go on a long vacation and think you're going to feel better. But at the time I thought like, I just need to like separate myself from it for a month and come back refreshed, rejuvenated. I'll be good. And I didn't. I literally felt it 100% the same way I did before I left and was like, this makes no sense. Like, I didn't think about work. It wasn't like I was on vacation, but still sort of kind of working. I didn't at all. And that was the moment coming back and realizing that it didn't fix it, where I was like, I have to literally like kind of step back and take a bigger look at what the issues are. And that's where, for me, it's the whole creating accountabilities for my leadership so that I could actually truly step back, because my employee people pleasing kind of self can't handle it. And so yeah, July or August of 2019 or 2020, when I went to Costa Rica, when I came back in August, is when I like completely revamped accountabilities around my leadership team so that I could actually step back in a more meaningful way versus having them like in middle management, which I feel like kept me in the loop constantly and like a big part of everything, which didn't help me feel any better. And I was just spending a lot of money paying for leaders when I had to still be majorly involved. Yeah, that was it for me.
Yeah. I wish I could say mine was that planned and profound and organized. Mine really wasn't. It just kind of, my whole entire life just blew up in my face. Honestly, I mean, everything was fine. There was really no issues. I was just working as usual, and had a issue in my marriage, and my husband at the time um just was making accusations against me that were not true. And I felt, once again, it took me back to that, like, oh my God, I'm trapped feeling. And a lot of crazy shit happened. And 5 days later, I filed for divorce. And I mean, we had been together for 10 years, had 2 kids, and I was just like, peace out. Like, no, no. And it was just an eye-opening experience, because I not only just reevaluated my marriage, but I reevaluated my role as a friend, my role in my business. I looked at all my relationships, everything I had going on, and I just said, if I'm gonna blow it up, I'm gonna blow it up. Like, I'm looking at everything. I'm changing everything. And so that was kind of it for me. And it took a good, I mean, it's been 3 years now since that happened, and still, I'm still thinking about it, and still making tweaks here and there, noticing when I get pulled into the business, when that's a good thing and when that's fine and when it's not. But how it happened.
We are really close on time, so I'm gonna kind of wrap us up. Guys, if you have questions, pop them in that Q&A box and we'll get to as many as we have time for. But while I have you, I do just want to thank our amazing panelists for sharing all of this wisdom and being so vulnerable. If you'd like to support them, I do have links in the chat. The first one is for Maureen's new book that's coming out. If you have a copy, feel free to hold it up. You are ready. It is coming out May 6th. Is that right? Yes. So absolutely pre-order a copy of that. That is super exciting. That second link is for Gabrielle. This is a course that she has created all about selling your business successfully. If that's you, if you're ready to let it go, hop on that bandwagon with Gabrielle. Let her share all of her secrets. And then that third one is the book, or the link to Kasey's book, In Search of You, which has obviously inspired this conversation. And if you do happen to purchase a copy of the book today, definitely send us your receipt. Send me your receipt, and I'll pop my email in the chat so you guys can send that to me. And we will send you a swag pack of goodies from us to you.
Yep. And if Maureen and Gabrielle, if you have anything that you would like to send out as a thank you, if someone purchases your book or any of your products, let us know, and we'll just bundle it all together and send those out to everyone. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Emily, do we have any lingering questions? Or
we do, yeah. Jess says, can you talk briefly about what leadership needs to be in place besides an office manager or clinical director in order for you to be away from the practice?
Do you want to answer that, Maureen?
Sure. So for me, it's less about positions and more about roles. And so all of our group practices have the same roles. And, I always think like practice manager, clinical director is so hard, because what Kasey or Gabrielle or I call a practice manager might be completely different from each other and from you. And same with clinical director. I've seen people who have clinical directors who are just providing supervision, where like other people's clinical directors are a part of hiring and onboarding. And so I look at it from a perspective of roles, and all of our practices have the same core roles, whether someone's in it or not, right? If no one's in it, it means that we're just doing it or we're not doing it, but it still exists. So with regards to leadership, someone who's leading in a sales and marketing perspective, a lot of smaller practices, it might be the business owner still doing it, even if it's not like intentional and purposeful, but it's still happening. Operations, I separate it into three categories for operations. So admin operations, someone who's leading the administrative operations, someone who is like accountable to ensuring that the person who's answering the phones, the person who's doing the billing, the person who's you know, an admin assistant supporting and all that, that there's one person who's leading that team, admin operations, who knows like what the accountabilities are, what the goals are for admin, and can make sure it's happening. Clinical operations is the second operations role. And that might be like in my case, it is the clinical director who's like in charge of clinical operations. And that's essentially the person who's leading all of the clinical leadership team, whether you have site supervisors or provisionally licensed supervisors. They're the ones that are in charge of supporting like the hiring of the clinical roles, ensuring that it's the right, you know, the right clinicians are coming to the table, making sure that the clinicians are seeing the amount of clients they should, and, you know, doing the notes the way they should and in the timely fashion and all that fun stuff. And then HR operations role. So someone who's ensuring that recruiting, that we're doing the right kind of recruiting, bringing in the right people to the practice, that they're being onboarded well. So someone leading in that kind of like HR operations role. And then someone who's in charge of finance. And then in my practice, I also believe someone needs to be in charge of DEI efforts and ensuring that like across all of the departments that there's a through line of like how anti-racism kind of and anti-oppression flows through all that. So I know I might not be answering it exactly how you want, but it's less about what people like job titles you need in there, but who is leading the clinical operations fully, and what does clinical operations look like for you? Who's leading in recruiting and hiring and onboarding, which I call HR operations, and who's leading from an administrative operations role? Those are like, I would say, the core ones, but then we also have leading in sales and marketing and leading in finance. Someone has to be in charge of those. When you have all of that put together, that's when you can really step back and be a visionary.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm very impressed. That was a very, a very big answer in a very concise amount of time. Okay, well, we're right at it. So I think to close, I would like you all to tell me what's bringing you joy right now. Kasey.
My grill. I told you.
What about you, Gabrielle?
I mean, in this very moment, this matcha is made perfectly, so that's bringing me joy. I think
Perfect.
on this past week, I just got back from co-hosting a big retreat summit for therapists, and I feel very fulfilled that I got to help people move through burnout and live their dreams. So that's the cheesy answer.
I love. Maureen.
For me, it's planning my trips. Vacations and trips are what fuels me. And so right now, planning a trip and enjoying that. That's what's bringing me joy.
Awesome. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with us, sharing your wisdom. And for all of you who are watching live, be on the lookout. We'll send out the recording in an email, and all of the goodies and the links that I shared will also be in there. So we will talk with you guys soon. Thanks so much.
Thank
We'll see
you.
you.